When our fingers brushed, it was as if the world stopped and the air around us crackled with energy. What was that feeling? Was it just me? I didn't expect our hands to meet like that, but the spark between us was undeniable. Could it have been a coincidence, or was something deeper at play? The instant our skin made contact, I felt my heart race, my breath catch. Was it just a momentary glitch, or the beginning of something life-changing? Electricity surged through me when our hands brushed, and I couldn't help but wonder, what if this was fate trying to tell us something? The briefest touch, yet my mind was consumed by 1,000 thoughts. What could it mean when your skin touches someone else's and everything changes? I barely noticed the moment our hands touched, but the electricity that followed was impossible to ignore. What does it say about us, about the bond we're starting to form? There was no denying the jolt of energy that shot through me the instant we touched. But what does that feeling really mean? Am I imagining things? Every nerve in my body screamed when our hands brushed. It was just a touch, but the connection felt deep, like a magnetic force I couldn't explain. I never believed in love at first touch, but when our hands accidentally brushed, I started questioning everything I thought I knew about fate. A mere accident or something more? Our hands met, and for a moment, the entire universe seemed to pause. Was that a sign? When our hands touched, I couldn't breathe. That electric charge, was it the start of something or just a fleeting moment of chance? It only took a second, but the energy between us lingered for hours. What does it mean when a simple touch feels like destiny? I never thought a touch could feel like a spark, but there I was, feeling like my whole world was charged with something unspoken. The moment our hands brushed, I felt a shift in the air, a sudden rush of heat. Was this just an accident, or was it a sign that we were meant to cross paths? My heart skipped when our hands collided, and for that fleeting moment, I felt something indescribable. Was I imagining it, or was there really something more? I couldn't understand it. A casual touch, yet I felt a wave of emotion flood me. Was that touch a message from the universe? The way our hands met sent a shockwave through my body. Was it just a moment, or could something incredible be starting to unfold? In that brief second, our touch was more than just skin on skin. It was a pulse, a current of energy that made everything feel so alive. I thought it was just an innocent accident, but the second our hands touched, I could feel something electric, a connection I wasn't ready for. I wasn't prepared for the rush that hit me when our hands met. What could this fleeting touch mean for the future? That accidental touch between us was like an invitation, an unspoken promise. What if this moment was the spark to something much bigger? A touch so brief, yet so unforgettable. I never knew a simple hand brushing could have such a profound effect on me. When our hands brushed, I felt a shock of electricity, like a message from the universe. Could it be that fate was trying to tell us something? I couldn't shake the feeling that our hands touching wasn't just a coincidence. Could it have been a sign from the universe, urging us forward? That touch, it wasn't just accidental. It was a spark that ignited something I couldn't ignore. Was it meant to happen or just a fleeting moment? What started as an innocent touch turned into something much deeper. Was it a connection I wasn't ready for, or something I'd been waiting for? It felt like fate when our hands touched. But what does it mean when the universe sends you a sign like this? Was this just the beginning? My heart raced when our hands brushed. It wasn't just the electricity I felt, it was the promise of something more. A touch like that could change everything. What if the universe had been waiting for this exact moment to bring us together? Our hands brushed, and I felt my soul stir. Could something that small, something so innocent, really change everything? The moment our skin touched, I felt an undeniable pull, like a current flowing through us. Was this what they mean by fate? I didn't expect it, but when our hands met, I was overcome with a powerful wave of emotion. Could this be the start of something special? That accidental touch, it wasn't just a simple gesture. It was a signal that something bigger was about to unfold. In that instant, when our hands brushed, I felt a shift. It was like the universe had orchestrated this moment just for us. There's a reason we crossed paths. That touch, brief as it was, felt like a sign, a spark that was never meant to fade. The world seemed to slow down when our hands touched. It was just a second, but in that second, I felt a deep connection I couldn't ignore. It wasn't just the touch, it was what followed. That surge of energy between us, like we were connected in a way I couldn't explain. The briefest touch, and yet I felt something electric pass between us. Was it a sign, a warning, or something else entirely? What was it that made my heart race when our hands brushed? Was it just nerves, or something more that was pulling us together? One touch, and everything changed. That electric connection felt like a promise I couldn't understand yet. When our hands touched, it was more than just skin on skin. It was like two souls touching, and I could feel it deep inside. That single moment when our hands brushed was a spark that lit up everything around us. Was that fate? I'll never forget the electricity I felt when our hands touched. Was that the universe's way of telling us our paths were meant to cross? What was that feeling when our hands touched? It was like the universe had just whispered to me, was this a sign? In that moment, when our hands accidentally touched, it felt like my whole life had just shifted. Could it be that fate was playing its hand? The moment we touched, I felt something change. Was it just a coincidence, or was there a deeper meaning behind it? I couldn't breathe when our hands touched, and I knew right then that this was no ordinary moment. Was this the beginning of something magical? That accidental touch, that spark of electricity, it felt like an unspoken invitation. What was the universe trying to tell us? It wasn't just the touch that took my breath away. It was the feeling that came after. Could this be a sign of something bigger? There was no mistaking it. Our hands touching wasn't just an accident. It felt like an invitation to something I couldn't deny. For a second, time stood still. That spark, that touch, felt like the universe pulling us closer. Was it fate or just an accident? It was just a simple touch, but when our hands brushed, everything else faded away. What was this connection that lingered? I never thought a touch could feel so alive. But there it was, electricity crackling between us, and I couldn't ignore it. That single touch felt like 1,000 thoughts crashing into my mind. What was I supposed to make of this strange, undeniable connection? When our hands brushed, I felt the surge of energy. Could this be the moment that changes everything, or is it just a passing spark? I thought I knew what a touch felt like, but nothing prepared me for the rush I felt when our hands brushed. What if this moment, this touch, was more than just a coincidence? Could it be the start of something I wasn't ready for? In the briefest of seconds, our hands touched, and the world around me seemed to disappear. Was that the universe trying to tell me something? I couldn't explain it. When our hands met, it was as if a connection formed that went beyond words. Was it fate or just an accident? When our hands brushed, I felt a spark. Something deep, something real. Was that just a touch? Or was it a sign of something more to come? The touch was so brief, but it felt like an electric current coursed through my veins. Was it just a coincidence, or was there something more to it? In that fleeting moment, when our hands brushed, I felt a shift within me, a feeling I couldn't ignore. Was this just the beginning? I never imagined a simple touch could cause such a stir inside me, but when our hands brushed, it felt like the universe had just given me a sign. It wasn't just a touch, it was a connection, a spark that seemed to ignite something deep inside me. Was this a coincidence or fate? For a second, everything else faded away when our hands touched. What was that feeling? Was the universe speaking to us in that instant? That moment, when our hands brushed, was like the first thread of a story yet to unfold. Could this be the start of something much bigger? I couldn't understand why that touch felt so intense. It was just a brush of skin, but it felt like something much deeper was happening. It was a fleeting touch, yet it left a lasting impression. Why did it feel like we were connected on a deeper level in that moment? A simple touch that left me breathless. It felt like the world shifted for just a second. Was that the universe's way of saying something? When our hands met, I couldn't help but feel like I was being pulled into something I didn't expect. Was that the spark of something incredible? That accidental touch sent a jolt through me, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were meant to cross paths in that very moment. A brush of hands, a rush of electricity. It wasn't just a touch, it was a signal. What was the universe trying to tell me